From Illinois Soul, you're listening to Dialogue. I'm Reginald Hardwick. Dialogue is an exchange about culture straight from the soul. According to a 2024 Pew Research survey, nearly half of American teenagers say they are online constantly, and that includes podcasts. Many children enjoy making podcasts as well. NPR's Student Podcast Challenge is open to students in grades 4 through 12. In a moment, we'll talk with NPR's education editors about how to help the child in your life enter. But first, let's share with you a portion of one of the winning podcasts. In 2020, a group of New York City students at the High School for Innovation in Advertising and Media recorded the Flossy podcast about climate change and environmental racism.
Actually, you never really see it, think of it like that because,
bro, that's like environmental racism.
Climate change is racial injustice.
Welcome to the Flossy Podcast. My name's Jaheim.
My name is
My name is Jamar.
My name is Brianna.
Josh.
Mari.
And today we're talking about climate change. Today we went to the climate march, and what stuck out to you guys the most?
the magnitude, the amount of people that was there. I knew there's gonna be a lot of people, but I didn't expect there to be that much people.
And adding on to that, just the vibes and, the vibe we got once we were there. It was a whole lot of energy. People that felt very passionate about it.
What's crazy is that out of all those people, I barely saw any black people.
I mean, there was some black people.
Yeah, there is.
But why do you think that the majority of people weren't black?
Honestly speaking, I think it was about availability. Most of the kids that was at the march, they either go to school in the area or they live in the area. You're not gonna see us coming from Canarsie like we did, because we gotta come deep. It took an hour to get here. And nobody's gonna do that. If they're in the area, then they're in the area. I feel like if we had a climate march near Canarsie or in Canarsie, there'd be more people of color there.
So it's so you say it's it's based off of the environment.
Yeah, the location it was held.
Somewhat.
Because when you walk in the city, what do you see? You see bare white people.
And I think it's also because not that many people went through a traumatic experience of dealing with a natural disaster, such as a hurricane or earthquake or something like that.
Also, I think it's I think you said it earlier, we got other problems to worry about.
Exactly.
The climate is a big issue, but there are many pressing matters is what I would say the community sees. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Just so y'all know, all of us talking here are black.
What are the most interesting interview responses that we got?
Honestly, I think the one with that sign.
Play the clip.
Play the clip.
Yeah, bro, run it.
It's a major problem, and if we don't fix it, we about to die. And
It's an everybody issue. It's not just a one-person issue. If we need to keep fighting for change within the black community, we have to still make sure that the world is still here. So we need to make sure that the world is preserved. So we got to start with the world being here, and then we got to keep on going and going and going.
That was a segment from the Flossy podcast in New York City, students talking about climate change and environmental racism. In 2023, 17-year-old Georgiana McKinney was the high school grand prize winner of NPR's Student Podcast Challenge. A student at the Mississippi School for Mathematics and Science, Georgiana rang an alarm on the water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi, through the lens of young people.
Mariah starts her day by going to the bathroom to check if her water pressure is working before getting ready for school. As she turns the handle, no water comes from the faucet, and so she looks under her sink for a water bottle to find out that there are none left. She sighs, picks up her phone, and dials the high school.
Hello? The counselor is speaking.
Hey, I'm calling to tell you that my water pressure has been low the entire weekend, and hygiene has been hard. I ain't going to be able to come to school today.
Hi, I'm Georgiana McKinney, and this is Real Mississippi, a student podcast written, recorded, and produced by students at the Mississippi School for Mathematics and Science. Jackson, Mississippi has been dealing with water issues for a long period of time, but the issue has recently gotten worse. In the summer of 2022, the city shut down because of dilapidated infrastructure. The main pipes at the O.B. Curtis and the water pumps at J.H. Farrell Station were already severely damaged, but after flooding, the pipes collapsed. As a result, the city's water towers were left dry, leaving the city without enough water for their homes, schools, and businesses. The news covered how businesses had to shut down and how the workers were affected. However, they seem to have forgotten about the youth of Jackson during this water crisis. Children are missing instructional time in the classroom, and it is not talked about enough in the media. On January 6, 2023, Jackson Public Schools had to go virtual after reports of little to no water pressure were reported in all 33 schools. They returned back to classes on January 9th, and this marked the 5th day of school that they have lost because of the water crisis.
That was NPR's Student Podcast winner from 2023, hosted and produced by Georgiana McKinney about the water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi. So how can the young podcast producer in your life here in Central Illinois enter? IPM's Kimberly Schofield spoke with Steve Drummond and Janet Lee from NPR's Education Desk about what students and adults need to know before they submit.
What inspired the two of you to get a podcast challenge going?
Back 7-8 years ago, we had that terrible shooting in Parkland, Florida, and many of the students there had started becoming activists and were speaking out about the gun violence that had happened in their school. And there was a bit of a national discussion about elevating youth voices. For some time, we had been thinking on the education team about some project that would kind of put our money where our mouth is in terms of involving students and involving teachers around the country. And that's what led us to start the podcast challenge.
This one is for students in grades 4 through 12. What parameters do they have to follow and what can they submit?
Every work that students produce must be self-made. You should write your own script, work on it yourself. And for these young students, you have to work with someone who is 18 years or older to submit it. So that can be your teacher in most cases, or we get a lot of entries from librarians, sometimes parents or other educators. And we ask that it is limited between 3 to 8 minutes in length. Over the years, we learned, especially from our younger folks, the shorter the better. And one last thing that I would add is not using any copyrighted audio. So we want to make sure that we can share your work on the radio and want to make sure that everything you have is original material. But other than that, it's truly open. Any topic you want. Could be something you're working on in class, a passion project. We get a lot of family stories, also a different form of like final assignments made.
What are some of the favorites that you've been getting? I know you said you get a lot of family topics from students. What do you like about this podcast challenge?
One of the things I've noticed over the years, Kimberly, is so many, as you know, young people at that age, we all probably were too, are very focused on who they are and what their place is in the world. And we've had a lot of really moving and compelling stories of students exploring their identity or their racial or gender identity or their place in the world through their families or talking to their grandparents or whatever. But at the other end of the spectrum, we've had students engaged in actual journalism. One year, a student from New Orleans bought a water test kit at Home Depot, and he took it into his school and tested the water in his drinking fountain and found unusually high levels of lead in the schools. And that made a big stink in the New Orleans public schools. We've had entire classes take on an investigative reporting project all over the map. The one thing that Janet and I notice so much every year is the thing that really makes a podcast stand out is the students really bringing their own passion and their interest in it and really sort of conveying that. If it's a story that you really want to tell and you're fired up to tell it, that tends to come through the microphone and into our headphones.
For the students, when they're putting everything together, is there anything they should stay away from? Should they be looking at specific levels or being in a certain room? I know that audio quality can kind of be hard if they're out in the world, but I imagine that ambient sound is okay in this particular case.
Oh, we welcome natural sound and ambient sound. I would say the one that I would stay away from, and this is because it's for our 4th through high school students, we get a lot of entries recorded in the lunchroom that I'm listening and I'm like, oh, I want to know what's happening, but there's all your friends talking in the background, so we can't hear you. So I would actually make sure you record yourselves in somewhat of a quiet space where we can hear you. And yeah, we love any types of exploring natural sounds, getting interviews. We also get a lot of podcasts where it's just one student telling us a beautiful story. But we would love for you to think about how you can use sound to make that something more special.
Janet, talk about pillow forts.
Yeah, pillow forts. I was actually just going to throw to that, Steve. We have a resources page called Sound Advice from NPR. And one of them is this sweet little video on our correspondent, Don Gagne, who travels a lot building pillow forts in different rooms that he has to stay in. So using a bunch of pillows to make sort of like your self-made studio that any student can make so you can sound beautiful and kind of round out that room tone.
That was Janet Lee and Steve Drummond from NPR's Education Desk talking with Kimberly Schofield about the NPR Student Podcast Challenge. It's open for submissions through May 2nd. We have links to how to enter the challenge and winning podcast at our website, will.illinois.edu/dialogue. And that's all for Dialogue. Our team includes Kennedy Vincent, Ariel Ravaney, and Kimberly Schofield. Our theme was composed by Lamont Holden. Dialogue and Illinois Soul are a production of Illinois Public Media, which is a service of the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm Reginald Hardwick. Have a great week. We look forward to our next Dialogue coming up next week.